Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a long, focused look at one of the biggest paradoxes shaping business right now, and that's the massive gap between how excited organizations are for artificial intelligence and how ready their people actually are.
It's the ultimate organizational disconnect, isn't it? We're seeing technology being deployed at just light speed. But there's this troubling inertia when it comes to preparing the human workforce, the people who actually have to integrate these tools into their daily work.
Absolutely. And for this, we took a deep dive into some really fascinating organizational research and survey data. We're talking responses from over 1,600 HR professionals. And the numbers, well, they're truly astonishing. Our mission today is to understand why this gap exists, and maybe more importantly, how organizations can close it before they spend billions on tech that no one is equipped to use.
And there's one striking statistic that really defines this whole problem. Get this. 63% of organizations anticipate a high impact from AI-enabled predictive analytics.
Okay, so that's a huge vote of confidence in the technology itself.
A massive vote. Yet, and here's the kicker, only 2% have actually implemented these capabilities in key areas like human resources.
2%, that's a canyon of a difference between what they anticipate and what's real. If almost two-thirds of leaders believe this tech will change their business, but only 2% have managed to deploy it, it's something fundamental is broken. I mean, the stakes here are almost existential. If organizations neglect the human side of this, they don't just risk the implementation failing, they risk creating these persistent, costly capability gaps that will plague them for years.
Exactly. And let's start by looking at the sheer velocity of the technology, because that's where this whole story really begins.
That velocity is the first half of the paradox. Our data shows 68% of organizations now report that they are implementing AI beyond just, the exploratory phases. They're past the pilot projects. They're moving towards scaling.
And that acceleration is happening without a reliable map. No clear direction. The organizational strategy is lagging, and it's lagging dramatically. We saw the percentage of organizations with a formal, established AI strategy, it nearly doubled between 2025 and 2026. It went from 7% up to 14%.
Wait, if the majority of organizations are actively deploying this, 14% having a strategy still feels dangerously low. That means 86% of companies are putting the car on the road without knowing the destination, or even having a maintenance schedule.
That's a perfect analogy. Implementation is just dramatically outpacing any kind of planning.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets really counterintuitive and concerning. As adoption accelerated, investments in AI-specific workforce upskilling actually declined.
Declined. How can you possibly spend more on the technology while simultaneously cutting the budget for teaching people how to use it?
Well, it's a strange decision, isn't it? Investments in AI-specific workforce upskilling dropped from 42% down to 36% in that same period. It is the definition of a false economy. You buy the most advanced machine possible, but then you cut the budget for the instruction manual and for the mechanics who need to run it. Organizations, I think, mistakenly assume the tools are intuitive enough or that some basic training is sufficient.
And we can see this urgency in the Infotech Research Group's AI maturity curve, which tracks where organizations are on their adoption journey. Companies are just speeding up. For instance, those in the optimization phase, that means they have automated processes with comprehensive controls. That surged from 12% to 22%. And proliferation, which is, adoption across multiple departments, that jumped from 34% to 39%.
This signals a really clear, measurable shift past just tentative experimentation. Organizations are scaling up their technical infrastructure. But true readiness, that requires a parallel development of both the technical systems and the human capacity. When you have advanced tech that's outrunning human readiness, you get what researchers call a failure of socio-technical systems thinking.
Okay, that sounds like some serious academic jargon. So for the listener trying to figure out if their company is ready, what is socio-technical systems thinking in practice?
Simply put, it means remembering that a new algorithm or a fancy new platform doesn't work in isolation. It only generates value if the human system, the people, the processes, the culture is ready to embrace it, to trust it, and to integrate it. If you prioritize the tech over the socio, you create this misalignment. And that misalignment leads directly to the problems we are about to discuss.
And those problems hit the bottom line. Hard. That velocity is creating technical capacity, sure, but what's the actual cost of this human lag? Let's dive into the quantifiable fallout that leaders really need to be aware of.
Well, the most sobering statistic is the organizational performance failure rate for custom AI projects. The research shows that only 5% of custom AI implementations actually reach full deployment.
5%.
5%. Think about that. 95% fail to achieve their stated goal.
Wait, a 95% failure rate?
Yeah.
That's a near guaranteed failure, especially for projects that often cost millions and take years. So if the technology is sound, why are organizations spending billions on something that statistically just won't work? Is it really just change resistance? Or is the AI maybe not delivering the promised ROI?
The data is so clear on this. The technology is often capable. But the primary barriers to deployment are human factors. It's not the code that breaks, it's the culture. The top obstacles that were cited are things like resistance to change, persistent skills gaps, unclear roles, and misaligned incentives. People don't know how to use the tool, they don't know why they should trust it, or they fear the tool will replace them entirely.
It's the difference between buying a Formula One car and finding out none of your staff knows how to drive stick shift. But if you flip that failure rate on its head, you see this massive potential payoff for getting it right. Organizations that excel at technology enablement, so they intentionally prepare their people, they show 1.8 times higher innovation performance. That's the innovation dividend organizations are leaving on the table.
And beyond the financial wreckage of these failed implementations, there is a significant individual human cost. When AI transformation happens without the proper support, employees suffer from severe change fatigue. And this fatigue, it just tanks their effectiveness and their willingness to engage. The data shows that only 12% of respondents report not experiencing change fatigue.
So it's almost universal.
It is. It's a near universal experience during these poorly managed transitions.
And it goes deeper than just being tired, right? If employees perceive their skills are becoming obsolete, and there are no clear paths to develop new AI-relevant skills, they experience what the research calls severe competency threats.
That's such a critical concept.
Right.
This is the real fear of irrelevance. An employee looks at a new AI tool that can summarize documents or generate code and thinks, if the machine does this part of my job faster and better, what am I actually valuable for? And we have to address that identity threat head on. Because when employees feel their professional identity is under attack, they resist the technology. It's a form of self-preservation.
So if I'm a leader, how do I create a psychological safety to counteract that really deep-seated fear?
Well, it starts with leadership stability and transparency. We know that when leaders make decisions that are aligned with the organization's values, employees demonstrate 1.5 times greater resilience against that change fatigue. So leaders need to clearly articulate the why and show how the new technology will augment, not eliminate, key human roles.
Okay, so if the problem is human, the solution has to be human too. Let's shift our focus now to the blueprint for success, the proven strategies that actually work. And we'll start with, I think, the necessity of a strategic partnership.
This is a foundational finding. You must have strategic HR-IT collaboration. Organizations where HR and IT functions work effectively together, they are 2 times more likely to have a formal AI strategy, which we know is desperately needed. And they see 1.8 times higher innovation performance.
That correlation is just too strong to ignore, and yet these functional silos are so persistent. Only 55% of HR organizations report highly effective collaboration with IT. So how do we break down that wall?
You need integrated project teams. We have to move away from these sequential handoffs where IT builds the tool and HR is just expected to manage the people who use it. Look at the example of AGC Biologics. They created integrated teams for their talent analytics initiative by combining HR's deep understanding of, talent drivers with IT's infrastructure expertise. They just eliminated all the back and forth errors. And that integrated approach, it reduced implementation time by about 40%.
40%. That's a massive time savings, but it also ensures the product is actually useful. Look at Centennial College. When they were planning a new learning management system, a joint HR and IT working group made sure the platform aligned with both pedagogical needs, how people actually learn, and the technical support requirements, how it runs. That alignment prevented all these costly misalignments that would have popped up if either department had tried to lead the project alone.
The takeaway here is that the partnership has to happen at the strategic level. You have to ensure the technological rollout is designed around the human experience, not just the technical specs.
And that leads right into the next intervention, rethinking how we train people. The traditional, 3-day offsite workshops just isn't cutting it anymore. Especially when we know managers are already 1.4 times more likely than individual contributors to experience elevated job stress. They just don't have time to stop and learn.
which is exactly why we need to move toward learning in the flow of work, or LITOW. This strategy embeds development directly into daily activities. You learn exactly what you need right when you need it.
Learning in the flow of work. I love the concept, but for a stressed out manager, what does that actually look like on a Tuesday afternoon? I'm guessing less time away from the desk.
Precisely. It's an enormous opportunity because it's convenient and it's low friction. And yet only 8% of organizations currently implement LITFOW,
Hmm.
despite 53% anticipating a high impact from it. That's the next great gap to close.
Meritage Homes has a great success story here. Instead of some mandatory central training, they introduced an AI learning hub with these brief one-minute tutorials, and they put it directly within their internal communication platform where employees already were.
And that convenience, that low barrier to entry, it paid off hugely. That approach increased AI feature adoption by 60% compared to their old training methods, all while using just a fraction of the instructional time. The trust was there because the learning felt accessible, not like a burden.
And Pigment took it a step further. They embedded learning prompts directly into their AI-enhanced analytics tools. So when a user did something complex, a little tip would pop up, explaining how the AI got its output or suggesting a better prompt. That contextual learning cut down on user confusion and support tickets because the teaching happened at the exact moment of friction.
Right. And while LATFOW handles that continuous learning, foundational AI fluency still needs more structure. You can't just rely on pop-up prompts to build deep expertise. And that brings us to our third actionable strategy, targeted capability building.
Right. You can't train the CEO the same way you train a data scientist. You need differentiated learning paths that respect the different needs and, frankly, the different time constraints of your workforce.
Absolutely. You need an executive track that's focused on governance, risk, and ethics, a manager track focused on change leadership and team productivity, and then the professional track, which is about hands-on usage, specific skills like prompt engineering for their specialized tools.
Acumen is a great example of this. They developed a whole AI skills academy with bronze, silver, and gold certification levels.
And that tiered system gave people clear motivation, visible proficiency targets. It made the learning measurable and relevant to their careers. The results were impressive. 70% of their employees got at least the bronze certification within a single year. It democratized that basic fluency while giving people an incentive for deeper expertise.
And the Sitka group focused on immediate, tangible application. They launched an AI rapid prototyping program. It combined this intensive 3-day training with 30-day innovation sprints. It wasn't just classroom theory, it was learn and apply.
By combining that concentrated skill building with immediate practical application, they generated 47 viable AI applications in the first year alone. They were solving real internal pain points, often problems that a centralized IT initiative would have overlooked. It just proved that competence drives confidence and confidence drives deployment success.
So we've covered collaboration, we've covered training mechanics. But to make this change stick, we need systemic changes. Moving beyond individual programs to the organizational culture and its governance.
This is where long-term fluency really begins. Organizations with these continuous learning cultures, they show significantly higher leadership effectiveness. We're talking 34% higher in talent development and 47% higher employee engagement. This is the ultimate sustainable competitive moat.
And to achieve that, leaders have to model the behavior. If the C-suite views AI learning as something that's beneath them, the entire workforce is going to follow that lead.
Right. Senior leaders need to publicly discuss their own AI learning journeys, the challenges they're facing, the tools they find useful, and they need to allocate visible time to skill building. That signals to everyone that AI fluency is a strategic priority, not some optional HR checkbox exercise.
It also requires a culture of real psychological safety. Leaders have to explicitly communicate that learning this stuff involves trial and error. Managers have to create space for testing AI applications without penalty for failed experiments. If people fear being penalized for trying something new, they will just stick to the old safe ways. And that guarantees that 95% failure rate we talked about.
And this cultural shift, it has to be anchored by human-centric AI implementation principles. Transparency and oversight are crucial here. Organizations must communicate how AI systems are informing decisions, what data they use, what limits they have, and they have to maintain meaningful human decision-making authority, especially for high-stakes talent decisions.
Ochsner Health is a really good model for this. They implemented comprehensive transparency protocols for their AI-enabled clinical decision support tools. They weren't secretive about it. Clinicians understood how the AI generated recommendations, which significantly reduced resistance while strengthening the appropriate reliance on the tools. If you understand the limits, you trust the capabilities more.
Finally, we need to make sure AI fluency isn't just an optional class. It has to be built right into how we develop our leaders. We found that only 30% of organizations report their leaders effectively delegate tasks.
That's a huge operational inefficiency in itself, but how does delegation relate to AI fluency?
Well, effective delegation correlates with a 1.5 times higher likelihood of having a continuous learning culture. Leaders have to integrate AI fluency as a core competency and use delegation not just to offload work, but to build their team's capability in AI application. They need to delegate tasks that specifically require AI tools, forcing teams to engage with and master the new technology.
This entire deep dive just circles back to one central truth that all the research seems to reinforce. Technology alone delivers no competitive advantage. You can buy the same algorithms as your competitors. But the value is only realized when that technology is paired with the human capability to leverage it, creatively and effectively. That's the real differentiator.
The choice for organizational leaders is stark. You have to match your AI implementation pace with an equivalent intensity in workforce development. Or you face the consequences of massive implementation failure. And this isn't just about avoiding failure, it's about proactively maximizing the opportunity.
So we'll leave you with this final provocative question. Based on all the data we've reviewed today, organizations that are effective at managing large-scale change demonstrate 2.3 times higher innovation performance. So considering that 95% failure rate for custom AI projects, which approach will your organization choose? Proactive, strategic investment in your people, or reactive recovery after the implementations have already failed to reach any meaningful impact? Something to think about as you plan your next move.